Good morning. Welcome to the May 22nd, 2024 Cemetery and Funeral Bureau Advisory Committee meeting. My name is Gina Cheverini Sanchez. I am the Bureau Chief. Before we begin and take roll call, I'd like to thank everyone here and online for this hybrid meeting. As stated in the agenda, the public location is located here at CFB headquarters in Sacramento, and our virtual option is via WebEx. Virtual parties that are interested in participating in this meeting by making a public comment must have microphone ability through their computer. If you do not, there is a phone call-in option to make your public comment. The link to join the WebEx event along with the call-in information is available on the agenda, which you can find on CFB's Advisory Committee webpage. That page can be found under the Quick Hits section of our website, which is cfb.ca.gov. All lines are currently on mute. As the meeting progresses through the agenda, the lines will remain on mute until I ask for comment. The public comment period will be available after each agenda item is presented and discussed by the committee members. As a reminder to our CFB Advisory Committee members, once each agenda item has been presented, I'll ask for discussion. If you have any comments or questions, please just press the small hand icon on your screen and either myself or the moderator will call on you. We're kind of a small group today, so it can be a very natural, I don't know how official we need to be with the hand raising with our committee members. This approach is necessary to facilitate this meeting and to ensure the Bureau can complete its necessary business. Again, I appreciate everyone's understanding and patience as we navigate this meeting format. So before we get started, I'd like to ask the moderator, are there any other general instructions you would like to share or that I have missed?
No, just to remind people that if they're not speaking, to mute their microphone, and just to say when public comment is called for, I will call on people in the order that they request to make comment or raise their hands, and they'll have a 3-minute time to comment, and I'll give them a 15-second warning. With that, I return the floor back to you.
Okay, great. So now, perfect timing, I'd like to take roll call. So we'll start. So committee members, when I call your name, please unmute your line or just speak up here in the room with us and let me know you are here. Miss Margaret or Maggie McMillan.
I'm here, thank you.
Thank you. And Miss Jolina Grande.
I am present. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Reverend Bensey.
Here.
He is here in Sacramento headquarters with us. Has Ms. Jean Okui joined us yet online? Not yet, I don't believe. Okay, so we do have 3 members here with us. We are an advisory committee only, so we do not need a quorum. We can continue this meeting to discuss our topics that we have placed on the agenda. So again, I just want to extend my gratitude for your time and your efforts to be a part of this committee. We appreciate your dedication to the industry and your time today. So this meeting is being recorded and will be posted to YouTube and linked at our website at a later date. So we'll move on to our very first, well, it's agenda item 2 after my updates, but the update on the International Conference of Funeral Service Examining Boards annual meeting. They are also known as just the conference, helps us a little bit. They oversee and administer the sciences section of the embalmer section for the embalmer examination here in California. This year I could not attend the meeting. However, our advisory committee member, Ms. Jolina Grande, was in attendance and will provide an update. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Gina. And for the introduction on the conference, so affectionately just hyphenated to ICFSEB if we wanted to do alphabet soup, but the conference regularly holds an annual meeting every February or early March. And this particular year in 2024, we were in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. In 2025, we will be in Palm Springs. So I encourage anyone who is interested in learning more about regulation and legislation and exam administration to consider attending the International Conference of Funeral Service Examining Boards annual meeting. When we met at the end of February for the 120th annual meeting, it was with quite a number of items on the agenda. The ones that probably were the most widely received or greatest interest were on universal licensing, portability, and recognition of practitioners that are certified or licensed or registered in other states being able to operate in additional jurisdictions. There was a wonderful update from the Federal Trade Commission. They have been under review of the funeral rule for a period of time now, and they provided us with a much needed update. We're anticipating seeing additional movement in that regard by the end of this year or the beginning of next year. There were some conversations about innovations in licensing and additional jurisdictions that are getting on board with natural organic reduction, alkaline hydrolysis, and additional licensing conventions, possibly expanding out regulation beyond just what is the typical practitioner license. There was a lot of conversation about the number of jurisdictions that are separating out the embalming license from the funeral directing licensure. But I will tell you, the best presentation by far that stimulated the most amount of conversation was what our colleagues in Colorado are currently undertaking, and that is to create licensing at the personal level that hasn't been there in more than 40 years. They have legislation that's making it through their legislative processes that will end up on the governor's desk, hopefully sooner rather than later. And they are thinking in terms of not only licensing embalmers and funeral directors, but also creating a licensing pattern for those individuals that have been operating for the last 20, 30, 40 years in a state that didn't recognize individual licensure, and how to bring those people that are professionals, they are practitioners, they have been doing the work on the daily, but now helping them with getting recognition as licensed funeral directors, embalmers, or otherwise within a jurisdiction that didn't have individual licenses at the time that these people began working. There was a lot of conversation about what makes us a profession and how to create professional standards. Before anything that ever gets talked about at the International Conference annual meeting, there is a host of other opportunities to engage with the International Conference. They regularly have call outs for individuals that want to participate in things like item writing. They have an item writing workshop that's coming up. Individuals that would like to participate in any of their work groups or standing committees. And then, of course, their regular professional development sessions with Dale Atkinson, their lead counsel, that always is quite stimulating in terms of conversation and gives us an indication as to what's going on in the regulatory world. So about the national board exam, that would be the statistics that are available on their website. They did roll out the new blueprint in 2023, and so far the examination statistics for the annual year of 2023 show that it was well received. Students or candidates are performing very well on the arts and the science sections. And as we move into 2024, our first quarter has already been put to bed, and you can see additional statistics that have been accumulated so far for the first 3 months of 2024 available on their website. And with that, Gina, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for that update. It sounded like a really exciting and informative meeting. Additionally, I guess I should also state that I was nominated to be the board, a board member now for District 9, which I have accepted. So I am going to be participating in those board meetings. We're going to be focusing on looking at the Model Practice Act and various things as a board member. So I'm very grateful to be a part of that and to really get more in depth with my relationship with the conference, as it does oversee that embalmer exam here in California. So thank you for that update. Is there any advisory committee comments to this topic? I'm very interested to see what comes out of legislation in Colorado, being that it's so close to California. So getting licensing standards over there seems like a great consumer protection move. So that is very exciting. And California, as most of us know already, have already separated the funeral director and embalmer license. So that is one thing when we talk about portability, is having our license standards the same across the nation. So a lot of the nation has, you have to be a funeral director and embalmer, and it's just one license. And of course, here we have split it up into 2 licenses. So that's very interesting to see where the nation will go on that, especially as we explore portability. So that is a hot topic for, I think, all of the licensing boards in California for sure. Besides my comment, is Maggie or Reverend Vinci, is there any other comments? No? Okay, I will open it up. Is there any public comment for agenda item number 2?
Thank you very much. Let me go ahead and open up the Q&A panel. And do we just want to say, if any public do join you in the room, you'll let me know? And
yes, currently we have no public members in the room.
okay, so I've opened up the Q&A panel, and we are displaying instructions. If anyone would like to make a comment on agenda item 2, please either raise your hand or type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. If you've called in, the way to raise your hand is by pressing *3. We are displaying instructions, and we'll give you a moment. All right, I'm seeing no requests for comment at the time. I return the floor back to you.
Okay, so moving to item number 3, this is our standard public comment on items not on the agenda. So at this time, I'd like to take public comment for items not on the agenda. If there's anybody in the audience who would like to make a public comment about issues not on the agenda, you may do so at this time. Please type the word comment into the chat box. When commenting, please state your name and the name of the association or organization you represent, if applicable, and keep comments to 3 minutes. Also, just as a reminder, neither committee members nor Bureau staff may comment on what is said during the public comment period, as stated in detail on the agenda. So there's no public in the room, so we can open it up online.
Thank you so much. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on agenda item 3, please raise your hand or type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. I do see we have one raised hand. So Benny R. Jones, you should see a prompt to unmute yourself. All right, Benny Jones, I'm going to give you permission to unmute yourself. If you see a prompt to do that, please click on it. All right, so I'm thinking that Benny Jones is having difficulty with that. Try that one more time. All right, so unfortunately, I am not able to unmute members of the public. I can only give them permission to unmute themselves. So Benny, if you are, oh, there you are. Benny, you are unmuted. Go ahead.
Okay, good morning. I'm not sure if this is the point to bring this up, but I just had a question regarding the status of Lincoln Memorial Cemetery in Carson, and if there are any options or any availability as far as the endowment fund being used to work out a plan for maintenance. That's my comment. Thank you.
All right, and I see no further requests for comment. So I return the floor back to you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Just for the member of the public, I'm Michael Knotes. I'm the board's legal counsel. Excuse me, the Bureau's legal counsel. That matter is currently in litigation, and it's not something we can comment on at this time, but there's public information certainly available And if
on the website. And if you call our main line, we do have some things that we can share with you online just as to, you know, what's going on with Lincoln. It's still currently an abandoned cemetery, but we are continuing to work on that as legal counsel stated through litigation to do what the Bureau has limited authority to do. But you can always reach out to me directly at gina.sanchez@dca.ca.gov, and maybe we can discuss in further detail, as this is not an agenda item per se for this meeting. Okay. Moving on to agenda item number 4, update from the Department of Consumer Affairs representative. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to our department liaison from the Executive Office of the Department of Consumer Affairs.
Good morning. My name is
can see
Karina
you.
Moreno of the California Department of Consumer Affairs. Thank you for the opportunity to join you today. First is the Public Service Recognition Week. May 5th through 11th was Public Service Recognition Week, and DCA joins in honoring the more than 3,000 DCA Board and Bureau employees dedicated to protecting California consumers. DCA thanks all employees and Board and Bureau members for their service and contributions to consumer protection. Next is the meet and greet with Secretary Moss. On April 30th, DCA hosted an in-person meeting with Secretary Tamika Moss and executive leaders. It served as an opportunity for DCA leaders to meet our new secretary and hear her vision and priorities for the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency and the department. Next is a licensee scam alert. DCA has learned of a recent increase in scams targeting licensees. Through the nature of scams varies. They are similar in that they involve individuals falsely identifying themselves as board employees and telling licensees that they are under investigation. The scammers attempt to gather personal and/or financial information and may even demand payment. Boards are urged to be vigilant and proactive in providing licensees with tips on avoiding these scams. DEI update. On April 5th, 2024, DCA's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, also referred to as DEI, Steering Committee held its quarterly meeting. The committee reviewed and discussed the member application process, establishing subcommittees, and solicited input from the committee on how to expand language access, workforce development, and advance DEI in 2024. The next committee meeting will be held on July 26, 2024. If you have ideas you'd like the committee to consider, please let your executive officer or bureau chief know. As a reminder, DCA's learning management system has many DEI-related training courses available. Board members are encouraged to participate in available trainings and continue to grow in our DEI efforts. Next is outreach. Last month, DCA's Office of Public Affairs staff participated in 2 Facebook Live events hosted by the Consulate of Mexico's Sacramento and Fresno offices during its Financial Education Week. Staff presented Get to Know DCA in Spanish and shared a broad overview of consumer and licensing information. In addition, DCA joined an in-person resource event with the Consulate of Mexico in Sacramento. Another Get to Know DCA virtual event will be held with the Consulate of Mexico in San Bernardino on May 14th. The consulates have expressed interest in future event partnerships to share even more licensing and consumer resources. Additionally, in the coming months, DCA will be developing workforce development outreach opportunities for all board and bureaus to participate in. I look forward to sharing more information soon. Next is the board member orientation training, BMOT, June 18th, 2024. Reminder, board members must complete BMOT within 1 year of their appointment or reappointment. BMOT will be held virtually on June 18th and again on October 22nd, 2024. Members can register for this training via LMS. Next is the Form 700. Now the annual Form 700 filing period has ended. DCA and BBR would like to thank all of our board members, executive officers for helping us to achieve nearly 100% compliance. Again, thank you for the opportunity to join you today. I'm happy to answer any questions from the advisory committee at this time. If further information or assistance is needed with any of the items shared today, please don't hesitate to reach out to Board and Bureau Relations.
Thank you so much, Karina, for that update. Speaking about Secretary Moss, that was a great meeting. I look forward to her leadership and, her goals and vision for what not only this Bureau, but this department has that she spoke to, collaborating with other departments, really trying to further our reach for consumer protection and really consumer outreach, letting consumers know that we're here, that we exist, and that we're here to help. This topic is not very fun for consumers to talk about, so I think that's why a lot of consumers don't even know we exist. So to increase our outreach to consumers directly is really definitely a goal of the Bureau and of Secretary Moss. So that was a very enjoyable meeting with her. To speak to the licensee scam alert, if licensees think they are getting scammed or receive a call from the Bureau and says you're under investigation, feel free to hang up and call us back directly, making sure you use our phone number that's posted on the website. Call us back directly so you can verify for sure if that call was a scam or not, and we will be able to let you know. So don't just start giving information over the phone. There's no reason for us to call and ask for financial information. We don't want your decedent's Medi-Cal information that you're helping or anything like that. So be wary and double check. So thank you very much for that update. Are there any other questions or comments before I open it up to the public? Oh, okay, let's open it up for public comment, please.
All right, I'm opening up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on agenda item 4, please raise your hand or else type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I'm seeing no requests for comment. I return the floor back to you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 5. This is solely a discussion topic on Business and Professions Code 7680 to seek input on whether the Bureau should consider a statutory change or explore, if possible, putting a regulation, but most likely it would be a statutory change. I'm going to start with reading the regulation first. So every license issued shall be displayed conspicuously in the place of business or employment of the licensee. The form and content of every license issued shall be determined in accordance with Section 164. Section 164 just talks about the form and content of any license, certificate, permit, or similar indicia of authority issued by an agency in the department, including any document evidencing renewal, certificate, permit, or similar indicia of authority shall be determined by the director, and so on. It goes on a little bit after there. So historically, the Bureau has interpreted the word every to include the mandatory posting of the original wall certificate in addition to the renewal certificate. With the continued improvements of technology, the Bureau is considering clarifying what exactly should be posted to properly implement this law to protect consumers. First, I'd like the committee to consider the original wall license requirement that we've historically required. The only information on the wall license that is not on the renewal license is the issuance date. Of course, the first issued original wall has the expiration also. But after that, that is now no longer valid, and then the renewal license is then issued with the new expiration date. So I'm not sure that an issuance date is necessarily needed for consumer protection measures. By only requiring a license that shows the status and expiration, licensees may be more compliant with the Act and receive less violations during inspections. Secondly, a printed license is only valid the moment it is printed. Many things can happen during that licensee year that can potentially alter the status. For example, it can be revoked or placed on probation. The most accurate way to check the validity of a license is through the DCA license search, which can be found from CFP's website. Many other DCA programs have already transitioned to requiring licensees to post a renewal that solely includes like a QR code that can be scanned from consumers that will take them directly to license search for that specific licensee. this is the most accurate way to look up the status of a license. So to wrap up my comments, I just wanted to discuss, one, the need for the original wall license, and two, eventually transitioning to a QR code style or something similar once we have the capability. So I believe that we can explore a regulation need, but we would most likely have to explore a statutory change to better identify what it means when it says every license, the actual license being held. So I would like to open it up to committee members to kind of start this discussion. I know we have a couple from the industry and from the public to really see what consumer measures, what issues are out there. This is one of our common violations, so I definitely want to kind of talk about this. Jolena, yeah, Ms. Grande, please.
Thank you, Gina. And I appreciate this topic of conversation on the agenda today because it has come up repeatedly on the updates that the Bureau gives regarding common violations that are found. What I have seen out in many of our funeral establishments, cemeteries, crematories, is that the intent of posting versus the practicality of where it's posted might not necessarily give the consumer immediate access as indicated in the language that was in the Business and Professions Code. I would really implore the Cemetery and Funeral Bureau to consider not only removing the component that the original license be posted, but also including possibly a more broader conversation that says all facility licenses are available on the Department of Consumer Affairs website. You can use this link or QR code to access them now. And then maybe an admonishment, please verify the condition of the license or the status of the license prior to executing any arrangements, agreements, contracts, plans, so that it's not necessarily the individual renewal license that they're seeing, but rather a blanket statement for all of the licenses. This is where you can check. So it's easily posted in all of the open areas of the funeral home and not relegated to a back hallway that families may only traverse as they're moving towards a selection room or possibly using the restroom facilities.
Yeah, and I think the reason that has happened is this back hallway, as you say, is just because of the requirement of both licenses. The original wall license is not a current license issue. That would be the renewal license. But because of this requirement, everybody has two, you have 15 people, that's 30 that are now placed, and you need a significant size of a wall to place that many licenses up. I have definitely been hearing the same thing. That's why I'm really glad we're bringing it here to this public meeting to kind of hear some feedback, just some feedback on that. We, before we started really digging into this statute to see if it's a statutory change, regulatory change, there are no current regulations attached to this statute. So this is the only thing that we're dealing with right now. Is the statute alone. So there is no regulation currently on how to implement the statute. So, so that's why we've taken every as every. But if we take every as every, then it's the original and every renewal you've ever seen, you know. And so we're not requiring that. So we really need some updated clarity as to where we can go with this statute, not only to make it easier for licensees, but really to make it easier and more direct for the consumer. The consumer goes into a hallway, and especially like a cemetery with a lot of salespeople. I mean, it's just a slew. Is that a word? A slew all the way down the hallway, and it is difficult to keep up with. Especially they're odd sizes, so they're difficult to put in the frames. They kind of slip and fall. Ms. McMillan, yes, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I was just going to agree with what you guys said and add in from an industry perspective. We have sort of centralized areas. So for larger companies or even smaller companies with different locations, you'll get the renewal, it'll go through the CFB, but the slip may not make it by the time the inspection comes. Or like we had the issue with the state where the printer went out, so licenses were all sort of behind. I think moving forward to a more modernized way to allow families to see licenses is really important. But I do want to also add in if the goal is for the Cemetery and Funeral Bureau to make licenses accessible to families, figuring out what that means, so that the statement that this funeral home operates with updated licenses is not then also relegated to the back corner. So as you're coming up with that regulation, as we are, I should say, making sure that that information is easily accessible to the public, as you said, sort of in an industry where it's difficult to access them a lot of times as they're coming to a place where they may need to interface with the CFP.
Yeah, and with the invention of this QR code, that's updated in real time. So it's not necessarily you would have to take it down every year and put it back up.
Yep.
It would just be the one forever, that as long as you're licensed, that's the QR code that goes to your license lookup. So each individual license will have a separate QR code that will take you directly there, is what my goal is what I've seen at other boards and bureaus under the department. So this will take, obviously, a lift from the IT department with us, a lift of resources here internally, but I think it is something that this bureau needs to really consider moving forward with technology. Consumers are used to QR codes. I think with COVID, everybody had to use a QR code for a menu. So I think that menu option for QR codes has really forced almost everybody to know what a QR code is and the ability to get on your phone and find how to scan it. Reverend Betsy, do you have any comment on license status or availability in places?
My thought that comes to mind is maybe it's an issue that rather as much going down the chain to go up the chain of if the whole department, surely there's other agencies and bureaus that are dealing with similar issues of
right.
printing and licensing, but looking at a more statewide perspective of industries of displaying licensing permits and what's feasible at a broader scope beyond just this industry. So.
Yeah, I think the department is the OIS team, Office of Information Services team here within the department is definitely open to these conversations. Absolutely. And I think it would be a huge cost savings for the Bureau as well. We're going to get into our fund condition in a little bit, and printing is expensive. We already print a courtesy reminder, then we print it, then we print a courtesy delinquent. We're already printing potentially 3 copies if somebody doesn't pay on time, if not 2 already, and then we print the renewal. So we have potentially 3 to 4 things that we are printing just to remind you it's due, here's the actual renewal, and now printing the renewal and mailing. So printing and mailing can get pricey. Those prices are going to continue to rise, obviously, as the economy is the way it is. So, this is definitely also something to consider for our budget. It'd be a great savings. So the Bureau can, I expect that I will be meeting with the OIS department here in the department to kind of explore this route. In addition, working with legal counsel on how we can implement this and whether it will require a statutory change. A statutory change is a little bit more time and will take a little bit bigger lift than a regulation, but I think it's important. I also think with the current administration to move towards technology, which is what we're doing with business modernization, I think it'll be very well received also. Okay, are we ready for public comment? Okay, let's open it up for public comment, please.
All right, I have opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on agenda item 5, please either raise your hand or type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I'm seeing no requests for comment at this time. I return the floor back to you.
Okay, well, thank you for that discussion. That really does give the Bureau its next steps on what we should be doing in this area. So I hope to have more updates on that as we go. Moving on to number 6, update on Bureau activities. This on the agenda is A through F. Typically, I will just the presenters, so it'll be more than just me this time, will be going down A through F, and we'll stop for public comment at the end. I also will ask for committee input at the end. However, if a committee member would like me to pause in between A through F, please feel free to just raise your hand or speak up if you want to comment in between. Otherwise, I will just keep rolling. We'll start with Sunset Review hearing. The Bureau Sunset Review hearing was very successful. I testified before the committee speaking to the accomplishments of the Bureau over the past 5 years, along with the current issues that the Bureau is facing. They're mostly related to endowment care and endowment care reporting and the abandonment of licensed cemeteries and the effect on their communities. The committee provided a background paper with identified issues in which the Bureau has already responded to. You can watch the hearing on the California Senate Media Archive website for March 11th, 2024. There was a couple that day, so this one was called Joint Hearing, Senate Business Professions and Economic Development Committee and Assembly Business and Professions Committee. CSB begins at 54 minutes and 39 seconds. So that's when I go up. There are a couple boards ahead of me. So the proposed legislation that has come out of our Sunset Review report will be discussed under agenda item number 7, but we are approved to continue for another 4 years, which is always great. And then we'll dive into the actual legislation that came out under agenda item 7. I really appreciate the background paper. Every staff member in the Bureau participated in the writing of that report. The background paper was written very, very well and really set us up to speak to our issues. The background paper is also available on the Assembly Business and Professions website. So I appreciate that. I can move on to an update on the strategic plan. It is a very small update, being that we're still in final reviews and development from our publications. So you know how beautiful our last one is, I must say. So once the final reviews of the edits have been made, we'll then start putting it into a very attractive booklet. And I can, once that is finalized, it'll go out, post on the website. We'll do outreach, email blasts, and so on. The goals have remained pretty static: licensing, enforcement, administration, and outreach, and legislation and regulations. So we got great feedback from the environmental scan, very positive feedback for licensing and enforcement specifically. And we will continue our goals with outreach, trying to reach out to consumers. Also, a big push is just making our documents and outreach materials more accessible, which includes adding additional languages and just getting that plain reading, especially for as you apply through CSB Connect as a licensee, making those questions very easily understandable and easy to upload the required documents and such. So we are looking forward to the next 4 years in reaching those goals and objectives in the strategic plan. So that is my update on the strategic plan. Moving on to staffing, we are always recruiting. We got a couple more promotions, so we've lost a few staff. Alexia Gallegos has moved to a different department. And so we are recruiting for the licensing and administrative manager. That actually job posting just closed, so we'll be holding interviews hopefully within a week or so. And then Sophia Hernandez, sorry, I almost stalled on that name for a minute. Sophia Hernandez, who is our licensing analyst with Lita McFadden. Sophia has gotten a promotion. So she has now left the Bureau, which has left us with one licensing analyst and no manager as we are going through CSB Connect and testing and developing those applications. So we are working hard. We are throwing what resources we can. Sandra Patterson, the Deputy Bureau Chief, is really jumped in and is helping that unit to continue processing the workflow as fast as we can as we wait to fill. I can say, however, we are already scheduled interviews for the staff analyst position. we are moving forward with recruitment very, very quickly. So we're not sitting on, we have no idle hands at the Bureau, I'll tell you. Once we fill those 2 positions, we will be fully staffed. So we'll be fully staffed again after that. Okay, so moving on to budget, we do have a handout for the budget materials. This is our CFB fund condition as of May 8th, 2024. So as you can see, the Bureau ended fiscal year 22-23 collecting close to $5.1 million in total revenue, and it is expected to collect almost $6.5 million in 23-24. So this is 23-24 is our first full year of the increase in fees, and so you can see that big jump there. The total expenditures for 22-23 was approximately $6.1 million, but is expected to reach $7.7 million for 23-24. Now that is if the Bureau fully expends its budget. Historically, we have not fully expended the budget, and we've allowed carryover from the previous year, and that then pushes out the months in reserve. So it always looks a little scary at this half-year point because we do project fully expending the budget for these fund condition runs. So I just want to say a few things to note in regards to the Bureau's fund. One of the main factors that drive expenditure increases in future years is a result of the personal service adjustments. These include general salary increases, as well as employee compensation and retirement rate adjustments. So additionally, the budget office in the fund condition includes a 3% increase to these expenditures on the outgoing years. So you'll always see that increase of expenditures each year because they automatically calculate a 3%. The fund condition does not include increased enforcement expenditures. This could create additional cost pressures or relieve a little bit of cost pressures depending on how much we spend in enforcement. That always that's really the wild card that really varies. So the months in reserve will always appear to go down out in future years because, like I said, the revenues will remain constant in these fund conditions, but expenditures increase by that 3%, as I stated. So it will always go down. What the Bureau has historically said without any unexpected costs, and when we did the original fee increase, is that we should be solvent until 27-28. So we are hoping that, this is the audit. This is the audit slide that you're seeing. Sorry, moderator, if we could just go back to that.
Okay, I got a request to show something, but I'm not sure what it is I need.
Did we not give you the 6D? We didn't give you that handout. That's okay. It is located on our website, and I did provide it to our members. So if we can't show it, that's technical difficulties. I'm sorry, everyone. But I think that was the end of my comments on the budget. Not seeing any questions at the moment, so we'll move on to business modernization. We're very excited about CFB Connect. I'll turn it over to Sandra Patterson, our Deputy Chief, for her update.
Thank you, Chief Sanchez, for the opportunity to provide an update on the Bureau's Business Modernization Project, or commonly referred to as BizMod. Previously reported, the Bureau is one of 17 programs participating in the department's BizMod initiative and one of 5 programs in Cohort 2. For a little over 2 years, the Bureau has been working closely with the Office of Information Services and the Organizational Improvement Office, among others, to implement business and technology improvements to the Bureau's antiquated information technology, or IT system, moving the Bureau to a platform that allows for the online submission of applications and reports, faster processing times, and electronic payments, which will better meet the needs of the Bureau and its stakeholders. This work includes, but is not limited to, business process mapping, gathering of functional requirements, providing subject matter experts, testing functionality, and giving feedback to the developers. This modernization effort will also allow staff to easily access statistical data and increase accessibility and accuracy. The new database, called CFB Connect, went live in May of 2023, and the Bureau currently has 2 applications available in CFB Connect, which are the original funeral director and the original funeral establishment licenses. There are more applications very close to release, such as the cemetery manager and crematory manager. The Bureau is actively working towards the release of these initial licensure applications for both personal and business licenses, as well as the release of licensing maintenance applications, which would include name changes, address changes, change of manager, corporate officer, or trustee. Moving to the new CFB Connect system has been a huge undertaking, and it has not come without expected and unexpected issues and delays. Some of these issues or delays include the transfer of data between the Connect system and the Consumer Affairs system and PSI, which is our testing vendor for the California law exam required for personal licenses. Other issues included duplicate profiles and missing tabs. All of the known issues that we've had have been resolved. However, it should be noted that the fastest method for becoming licensed as a funeral director is to apply online in the CFB Connect system and submit both your application and examination fee and the licensing fee together. As the Bureau transitions towards a more efficient electronic business practices and more applications are released online, the paper applications will eventually be removed from the Bureau's website and will be only made available upon request. As we move forward, the Bureau is encouraging the electronic submission of applications as it increases productivity within the Bureau and decreases the overall processing time. The next phase of CFB Connect is building out the enforcement side of the system. We're currently developing the online consumer complaint form, and we'll proceed with back office functionality after that. Due to the amount of staff time required to work with developers and test the system, it is expected that Bureau processing times, including enforcement timeframes, will increase. However, the Bureau is tracking this closely and diligently progressing through the work to prevent extended processing times. Once completed, it is expected that timeframes will be back to our performance goals. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So, yes, CFB Connect, that is what we are pushing for. Thank you for bringing up the fact that we will be removing the availability of the paper applications from the website. The reason for that is that the paper applications that come in, they could be missing something, you know, so on and so forth. All we do is we take that paper app and we have to key it ourselves into the CFB Connect system. So the CFB Connect system tells you exactly what you need to attach through each screen that you go through. So this will help with completed applications being received and reviewed initially. So it is very important to use the CFB Connect site. You have to register with an email, get a password, that whole deal, just like you do with any other thing. I mean, all we do is buy stuff online nowadays. You can see these major chains, closing right and left. So it's not like this is out of pocket. We all should be pretty used to this, but it will provide you with status. It'll provide you with one home screen that you can see your multiple licenses that you have. Many in our industry hold multiple licenses. Eventually you'll be moving renewals from our current renewal platform into CFB Connect. Will also be in there, so you'll have really a one-stop shop for your licensing. That's the ultimate goal. It will take us a while to get there as we're moving forward with one application at a time. So we're diligently working on the crematory manager and cemetery manager is our next two that we're looking forward to releasing. And then moving into our maintenance applications, those are actually some of the biggest that we receive, change of manager change of corporate officer, change of trustee. These are very, very simple applications. They just require, money in an app. And so we're hoping those can be released a little bit more quickly than these larger applications like original funeral establishment. That will probably be the first one that will be removed from the website for the paper application form, solely because there are so many attachments and requirements for that application that it works much better through the system itself than paper. It actually causes a delay if we have to key it all in and create the deficiencies. As Sandy stated, the funeral director application, many people don't pay for that funeral director license. They'll just pay for the application and exam fee. When that happens, that's fine. You can absolutely do it that way, but that does cause a delay in the issuance of your license because we have to issue you an invoice, and then you can go back into the system and pay for that license. So, if you're confident about the exam or you're going to take it till you pass it, then go ahead and pay for that all at once, because then that automates that issuance of the license once we receive that pass. So it's much faster. But of course, that is a personal decision for each applicant. So thank you for that, Ms. Patterson. We're going to move on to our audit update. I'll turn it over to Michelle Arthur, our audit manager, for her update on the mandated reporting for our licensees.
Good morning. So the 2022 cemetery annual reports, 84% submitted on time, so that's 157, not 187. So it's a slight improvement over last year. Only 1% are 30 days late, 3% are 60 days late, and 4% are 90 days late. And 9% haven't reported at all. Next slide, please. For the funeral side, 813 out of 1,163, or 70%, submitted their annual reports on time. 1% and for 30 or 60 days late, 26% or 90 days late, and 1% or 18 have not reported at all. This is also a slight improvement over last year. Next, please. Our cemetery quarterly reports, these are very timely, thank you. 93% reported their quarterly reports on time. This is for the entire reporting year of 2023. Less than 1% of these have not been received, so that's very good. We have begun enforcement actions to against these licensees who have failed to report. Next, please. For the crematories, these are also very good, over 85% on time. Only 1% of their crematory quarterly reports have not been received. And again, we are begun enforcement actions against these licensees who have failed to report. There is no slide for the hydrolysis facilities, but in 2023, there's only one licensed hydrolysis, and they are always on time. Thank you for that. Next slide, please. This is the 2022 oversight of funds. We oversee over $3.2 billion. These funds include $1.6 billion in endowment care funds, $96 million in special care funds, $3 million in special endowment care funds, which are considered like a flower fund, and $622 million in funeral pre-needs. There are 187 individual cemetery licenses that hold an ECF, 133 that hold SCF, and on the funeral side, 709 funeral establishments hold pre-need funds. Next, please. And this was an error, so sorry about that. We'll go on to the next one. For some time now, the Bureau has conserved a handful of trust funds. Within the past year, we have been granted conservatorship of even more trust funds, and currently CFB is the conservator over $27 million. These trust funds include endowment care and special care cemetery trust funds for these following establishments. I'll be happy to take any questions if there is any.
Okay, thank you very much. As you can see, we've added a little bit more transparency and a little bit more information to our audit report. Speaking to late reporting or non-reporting, the Bureau is pursuing citations for those entities that are out of compliance with reporting. So you will see that, I think, especially in the next, in the October meeting, you will see that a little bit of an increase in the citations issued, and that's because we are diligently working with licensee compliance to report. These last two slides show you how important it is to report, because there is a lot of money that is being held in cemetery and funeral trust funds that need to be reported on to the Bureau, mandated by law. So the first slide with the 3.2 billion, those are funds that are held by licensees. They are responsible for timely deposits and for conservative investments. So that is what our audit unit ensures with these annual reports, a review of the independent audit and financial statements to ensure that our licensees are in compliance with those laws, depositing timely, investing conservatively, only making disbursements of what they're allowed to disperse from. So we have that. And then as was spoken to in the sunset review hearing and in our report, is the abandonment of cemeteries, or if we revoke a license, cemeteries have an endowment care fund that pays for maintenance in perpetuity. Once a licensee walks away, or if there is mismanagement of the fund, the Bureau has authority to conserve the funds. So that is what these funds are for. They're held and protected by the state. If a new licensee comes in and gets licensed by the Bureau, there is also a method to petition the Superior Court to transition that fund back to a licensee. If there's no licensee that walks in, there is currently what we are exploring. There's a gap there that, what then happens to this fund. But in the meantime, this is consumer monies that the Bureau is protecting, that the state is protecting until there is a solution, either another licensee or a statutory solution of what to do with these abandoned cemeteries. So some of them are very, very old. Elkins, I'd like to say, this is not an abandoned cemetery. This is from a lawsuit from the early 90s, 80s, 90s, Elkins property. So this is an all-natural property that held the remains, cremated remains of thousands of individuals. That fund is used to just help support clearance of brush, help support the maintenance of the private road that goes up to it. But it is not something that should be necessarily visited like a cemetery. We just need to preserve that land because so many of thousands of people have been placed there, their cremated remains there. So that kind of takes care of the audit unit update. Let's start with comments on A through F. I didn't see any hands as I went, but are there any comments now? Yes, Ms. Grande.
Thank you for all of the presentations, and I apologize if my comments are interlaced with all A through F, but also individualized. With the International Conference of Funeral Service Examining Boards, one of the conversations that always arises during the annual meeting is sunset review hearings, and congratulations to the Cemetery and Funeral Bureau for successfully making it through another sunset review. I'm looking forward to watching the video archive of it because I'm absolutely certain you did an exceptional job espousing the virtues of regulation. And from the conversations that the conference is having, it's very clear that regulation is needed, especially as you're looking at the headlines every evening with the number of funeral service practitioners, cemeterians, cremationists that might be involved in what leads the evening broadcast. I am really looking forward to the published updated strategic plan, and I hope that the continued outreach and transparency, especially in the Bureau activities that have been reported today, continue as a component of that strategic plan. We really enjoy being able to send practitioners to the Bureau's website, to these activities, and be able to have, I don't want to call it a direct line, but almost a direct line to you, Gina. So when there are concerns, you're hearing about it first and foremost before it rises to the top and becomes a much bigger issue. But that does bring me to the governor's May revise in regards to the budget. There was a comment that was made during his broadcast about not filling some of the open vacant positions that the state has. Does the governor's budget have an impact on any of the open positions or the ability to hire for the licensing and administration manager or the licensing analyst or any of the field reps, and also to provide them with the allocated 3% that you had indicated in the budget, even if the cost of living adjustment is removed from the governor's May revise? So I know that that might be more of a question for a finance person than for you as an individual, but I am interested in knowing, does it have an impact, or are we self-sustaining now that we get to determine our hirings and it's not dependent on the condition of the state's budget?
I love that question, and I do have answers for you. Thank you for bringing that up. The governor's May revise did speak of a sweep of 10,000 vacant positions. We are already in mid-recruitment of both of our vacancies, which we only have 2. We just recently filled an associate management auditor position, so that's already filled. She just started with us. So we do have these 2 vacancies, which I spoke to earlier, and we are already in mid-recruitment. So we believe that those will be filled and by the end of this fiscal year, so by June 30th. So this, I am not expecting the sweep to affect us unless there's something perceived that I don't know. If somebody just, if somebody next week says they got a promotion, I will do my best to recruit as fast as I can. But as of right now, I think everybody's very happy with where we are. And I do expect both of those positions to be filled by the end of the fiscal year this year. Additionally, the governor spoke to an 8% reduction in the budget. So we are already working with the department's budgets office to identify where we can find that 8%. The comment was that we potentially are still getting that 3% general salary increase. However, if that does get taken away, that will also help, you know, that will help our budget to sustain longer. So although we are funded by licensing fees, we still do participate as being a department under the governor in these drills. So we do anticipate the 8% should be easy enough, and we will not get caught up in that sweep is my ultimate goal. So I hope that answered that question.
It did. Then thank you very much, by the way. I appreciate the response. In terms of business modification, I didn't hear Sandra mention anything about the embalmer's application and licensure. And I was wondering if that one, because it has the opportunity for applicants to either submit transcripts or certifications from funeral service education programs, is that going to end up being an issue with that particular license making the migration? And also, where are we on being able to send electronic transcripts to the Bureau? Is that making any sort of headway? Do we have a designated email address? Are there additional instructions that are going to be issued, or are we still going to continue snail mailing transcripts?
I love both of those comments. First, the embalmer application, it is on the list. We have already started exploring how that certification will work versus the transcript. If the certifications can come in the same manner as the transcript, because at the same time, we're even trying to work this into our strategic plan about exploring electronic transcripts from our California mortuary science schools. So if the transcripts come over and some are certifications and some are transcripts, then as we're kind of brainstorming how this would work with the embalmer application, it would come in the same way as a transcript, and then we would have to manually attach it electronically, obviously, just moving it from one bucket to the system onto allowing that certification, because that is very important that they can still test. We understand getting testing sooner the better, and we want to make sure that is smooth and quick to get them to exam as soon and quick as possible. So electronic transcripts is still my passion, Jolena. I am working on how to accept those, and I think that should be, you know, kind of an easier thing to do once we're fully staffed and have resources to throw at that. So yes, that is still coming. Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other comments from committee members? No. Okay, let's open it up for public comment, please.
All right, thank you so much. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on agenda item 6, please raise your hand or type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. We are displaying instructions. And I do see Steve Crawford with his hand up. So Steve, you should see a prompt to unmute yourself. There you go.
The Cemetery and Funeral, no, this is the California Funeral Directors Association, my apologies. I just had a quick question about the business modification, about if and when the ability to request duplicate licenses will be available online, or is that something that's going to have to wait until everything is ready?
We kind of lump that into our maintenance applications. So we were trying to get as many initial licensure applications first, and then moving into enforcement, and then moving on to maintenance. So yes, it's not necessarily next in line, but being that these are such a heavy lift, we do get more maintenance applications than even initial applications. They should be an easier and more, we should be able to get them up a little bit easier and more quickly because it just is the way they are. Requesting a duplicate, a change of address, a change of name, those types of things are being addressed, and we do hope to get them into Connect sooner than later. But I just cannot, I cannot commit to a date. I thought we'd have more online than we do now, but we are, I know that the first initial phase of this has really been the development of the tabs and really laying the groundwork of what these tabs look like so that we can quickly get up the rest of these applications. So yes, it will be part of Connect. I just can't comment on how soon, but I know the sooner the better, especially for that one, and change of manager. I feel like those are some pretty popular, one of the higher ones that we receive.
All right, this is the moderator. I see no further requests for comments. So Madam Chair, I return the floor back to you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to number 7 then, 2023 chapter legislation, and then the current 2024 legislative update. Go ahead, Carolina.
Thank you, Gina. Good morning, committee members and members of the public. Chapter legislation for 2023, we had 2 bills that were chapter. The first one is Assembly Bill 883, Business Licenses, United States Department of Defense SkillBridge Program. Currently, the Bureau is required to expedite applications from military veterans. The new law requires the Bureau, beginning July 1st, 2024, to also expedite applications for licensure for active duty military members participating in the U.S. Department of Defense SkillBridge Program. The second bill, the chapter, is Assembly Bill 1560, Crematories Change in Ownership. This bill permits a new owner of a crematory to submit an application to the Bureau to assign the crematory license. So as long as the application is submitted at least 30 days before the change of ownership and the new owner pays the application fee. Once the crematory sale is final, The bill will require the new owner to submit to the Bureau a copy of the final sales agreement within 10 days of the sale, and within 60 days of the sale, proof of any permits to operate the crematory issued by the local air pollution control district. Moving on to the current 24 legislation session, we have Assembly Bill 3254, Endowment Care Cemetery Reporting. AB 3254 is the sunset bill for the Bureau. It extends the repeal date of the Bureau's operation to January 1st, 2029. It also would require each licensed cemetery authority to provide certain information to the Bureau as specified in the bill on or before January 1st, 2028. Also, this bill will require the Bureau on or before July 1st, 2027, convene a work group, including specified stakeholders or interested parties list, to consider options to ensure continued maintenance of abandoned cemeteries, and to submit a report to the legislature summarizing the discussions and recommendations found. Finally, the bill also requires the Bureau to conserve the endowment care funds following the surrender, the cancellation, or revocation of a cemetery certificate license. And it must be transferred within 90 days in accordance with the statute. This concludes the legislative update. I will turn it over to Gina for further comment.
Thank you. So this is, well, first for the current, the Chapter 2023 legislation, the Bureau is already prepared to accept SkillBridge program applicants. So if we receive one as of July 1st, our military affidavit that is required for those requesting expedite will already be updated with the SkillBridge program question so that they can identify right away, even as of July 1st, to expedite those applications. So we are prepared there. For crematory change in ownership, that actually went into effect January 1, and we were prepared to accept applications. We had like a draft application online for those who are interested and had been diligently working through the regulatory process because this was such a quick, there was no delayed implementation here. So we are already prepared in the next agenda item to show the form and the regulations for that. So we're moving forward as fast as we can with AB 1560 and implementing that. The assignment of a crematory license, it's a little bit different than the funeral establishment, but this does help with continuity of business. We only have about 225 to 228 crematories in the state, and we are, you know, at about 65+% of deaths in the state do want cremation. So this lapse of license in between owners does cause not only the industry, but our consumers a bit of a delay. So in order to keep the continuity of business, we have, you know, now implemented this assignment of licensure. So because of that, there is a pre-requirements application 30 days in advance. And then as Ms. Salmons was saying, there's post requirements of our approval. So we will approve you, but then we must receive, as she said, the notice of sale within 10 days of the sale, and within 60 days of the approval, the air quality permit. So those are the two things that we'll receive post licensure. If those aren't received, those two things will then have to explore disciplinary action because that license will have already been assigned. So that's how we can protect licensees of when it officially changed hands from one to the other, and protect consumers by allowing that continuity of business to continue performing cremations, which I think is very important. The legislative update now, so this is our sunset bill. So great, we are going to continue working till 2029. The The mandated reporting for the Endowment Care Sufficiency Fund, we had 99.9% participate in the 2017 Endowment Care Sufficiency Study, where they actually had a task force that developed what questions and what information we need in order to provide the legislature how our endowment care funds are doing. So in being that those questions have already been developed, now we just need to mandate the reporting for this next report, which is all 7612.11 does, is it kind of outlines what questions we had discussed and discovered in the last task force, and then mandates every cemetery, licensed cemetery must report. Something very simple. We'll skip down to 7613.11, where it speaks of the Bureau requiring within 90 days conservatorship of an endowment care fund if the cemetery has not been sold to another licensee. So this gives about 3 months for a new licensee to come in and take over the cemetery that somebody maybe have walked away from or that we've revoked the license for. If that doesn't happen within 90 days, the Bureau can then immediately conserve the fund and protect that endowment care fund as we showed in the audit unit, as we've done before. So last but not least, I think abandoned cemeteries has been one of the biggest things in the news for us. And as we've seen, it's happened a little bit more often. This is not an issue that has come up in my predecessor's times. And I think it's directly relating to these older cemeteries filling up. This is a business, the cemetery is a business, and when a business owner can no longer make money, what do? They're still decedents, they're still loved ones, they're still community members in the ground that need to be cared for, but we cannot necessarily require a small business owner or a business owner to continue operating. So this conversation has happened a lot, and both in the news, both within the Bureau, with consumers, with legislatures. So the Sunset Review report did speak to it and put up potential legislation. However, they've come back with convening a work group so we can kind of talk out really the details of how can we prevent a cemetery from becoming abandoned? What role can the Bureau play in preventing that? And then if it does happen, who then is responsible for the maintenance of this cemetery in perpetuity? There are laws already in the Act. They are permissive for abandoned cemeteries without an endowment care fund. Endowment care funds didn't start till 59. So those cemeteries before 1939 that were smaller, they didn't want to do an endowment care fund. There is some statute in the law about how a city or a county may take those over, make them a pioneer cemetery. There is nothing in the law for endowment care funds. I think that is a gap in our Act that really wasn't thought of back in 1939 when the Act was created. This is a newer trend, a new problem. So I'm looking forward to convening this work group and really brainstorming some ideas on how the state can help these communities and how we can address this problem going forward in the future. In the 2017 Endowment Care Fund, it was shown that, there was a good number of cemeteries that were already full or almost full, about 17, and another 40 or less that had insufficient endowment care. So we are making strides to increase that endowment care. We've done a couple of things by raising the endowment care rates, by adding the unit trust distribution method. Both of those will help increase the endowment care for those that were underfunded, but those that were already full, there is no catch up that they can do. So that's really where this legislation needs to focus on, is those that are, abandoned or becoming full, and there's really no more business to be made. So how do we continue care for them in perpetuity? So I'm looking forward to that work group. That's the end of my additional comments. Thank you, Carolina. Is there any comments from the committee on new legislation? No? Okay, I'd like to open it up for public comment.
Thank you so much. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on agenda item 7, please raise your hand or type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I'm seeing no request for comment at this time. I return the floor back to you.
Okay, moving on to agenda item 8. Ms. Salmons will provide an update on our 2024 regulatory update. An update on the update.
Yes, agenda item 8, regulations update. This is as of May 1st, 2024. The Bureau filed a regulatory action with the Office of Administrative Law on March 29, 2024 for Assembly Bill 1381, Statutes of 2017. We expect the amendments proposed on this regulatory package to Title 16 California Code of Regulations, Section 1230, to be approved within the next couple of months. We just closed the 45-day comment on May 14th, and we're preparing the final phase documents for this regulatory action. The amendments to 1230 renames the section, reorders the subdivisions to match the order presented in the controlling statute, and amends the processes for whom may train apprentice embalmer. We are looking again to have it approved by Office of Administrative Law in the next couple of months. As for the last update, the Bureau is currently has prepared the proposed text in the application for Assembly Bill 1560, crematories change in ownership. We are working with our regulatory counsel to have this regulatory action ready to be filed with Office of Administrative Law soon. As previously discussed, this bill authorizes the crematory license to be assigned once we receive the application. It has the post requirements as specified. This particular rulemaking file is amending the California Code of Regulations 2326. Currently, this regulation has both application requirements for the cemetery application and for the crematory application. We have proposed to take the crematory application requirement and give it its own regulation. So we are adopting or proposing to adopt section California Code of Regulations, section 2326.01, giving crematory its own regulation. We are hoping to file with Office of Administrative Law within the next month or so. As part of this meeting, you'll see the application and proposed text included in the meeting materials. This concludes my presentation on this topic. I'll turn it over to Gina for further questions and comments.
Thank you. So for AB 1381, for the apprenticeship training, just very quickly, we just kind of did a cleanup for that California Code of Regulation. Like she said, we reordered it to match the order of the statute, added clarifying language, updated the form itself. So that one is already, moving along its way. We did not receive any comments on that. So we're, like she said, preparing the final phase document. So that should be in action very soon. So AB 1560, the change in ownership, the Bureau did work with the associations and got some great feedback as we were developing this draft text and draft form that has been released in the meeting materials. So this is your chance. The Bureau would like to take any other suggestions, any other, questions in regards to this form and the regulatory text. So the current regulation, as she said, in 2326 was getting incredibly long because it had the application for cemetery and crematory in one regulation. So then to include assignment in there would have just, it just would have been too long. So we cut that at cemetery and made crematory its own regulations so that we could very clearly show the application for either an assignment of a license or getting a new license. You know, you can do either one. So I appreciate that. I really appreciate the collaboration with the associations on getting this form updated and clearer. We did take all the suggestions. So if we can work any further on this before we provide the formal comment period, I would greatly appreciate any feedback on these over the next couple of weeks as we develop the initial statement of reasons and the rest of the documents for Office of Administrative Law, OAL. So is there any comments on either of these from the committee? Yes, Ms. Grande.
I was wondering when we might see the approval to train migrate into an online application.
Would we consider that a maintenance app? I think so. You know, our goal, when we started this project, I think we counted maybe 60 different various applications that we have, from licensure to maintenance, right? So yes, that is something that we would like to see into Connect. That one may be a little longer because I think that's not, first we were going for impact of how many we received. And so we're kind of working down that line of numbers wise for the greatest impact for our licensees and consumers to make to that. So it is in line, and I do anticipate all of our applications, including that one, to go into Connect. Okay, any other comments? Let's open it up for public comment, please.
Thank you so much. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment, please either raise your hand or type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I'm seeing no requests for comment at this time. I return the floor back to you.
Okay, moving on to agenda item 9, the licensing statistical report and update on examination development. There are handouts that were provided, and since Alexia is not with us, I will be providing the update this time. So we do have handouts. Our first handout goes, go ahead. The report. So our May meeting always does the first half of the fiscal year. So we're only looking at July 2023 to December 31st, 2023. So first half of the year in October, we will show the full fiscal year. So when you go through the slides and you see the comparison, you definitely will see obviously last fiscal year being higher because it is a full year versus this report, which is a half. Moving to the first slide of licensing performance measures. You will see that some of our performance measures have exceeded and increased. This was spoken to at the business modernization topic. We are doing our due diligence and getting through our applications in date order, you know, obviously looking at expedites and going as quickly as possible, but you will see that we are exceeding our performance measures in a couple of areas. We're closely tracking this, and like we said, as soon as we get fully staffed, licensing only has 2 staff, and so once, and we're recruiting for that second staff. So once that's fully staffed, we're doing a big push for Connect through the end of this year, hopefully getting a bunch more applications online. So we do expect this to continue, this trend. However, like we mentioned, this will obviously be a big focus to get us back to our performance measures, as we've always been, we've always previously met these goals. So we see it, we recognize it, and we're throwing as much resources that we can at it at the same time as releasing our business modernization efforts. So moving on to the next one is our licenses issued. New licenses that we've issued, 483. Last year was 1,034. Now once we get closer to that, like now, May, in June, we're going to see that number jump up because of the cemetery salesperson applications, which is one of our largest, applicant pool. So I do expect us to be around the same number as we were last year for the number of licenses issued. Moving to the next one, this one stays pretty much the same as always. Our license renewals, online versus mail-in, we get about half and half for online renewals versus mail-in renewals. Of course, online renewals renews much faster. You don't have to deal with mail. You don't have to deal with cashiering. So we always promote to apply online. That's why I'm going to keep this slide for as long as possible, even though it doesn't really change. All right, moving on to exam pass rates. This also remains pretty stagnant. We do occupational analysis and exam development every 5 to 7 years, which is the requirement. So we do know that our exams are current, they are defensible, and they are current with the trends that are currently going on. So these pass rates have kind of pretty much remained the same. Our embalmer, we only had one fail. That really goes to show how great our schools are doing. Our mortuary science schools are really preparing our embalmers for that California law exam. So we appreciate that. They're doing a great job. Last is our common application deficiencies. So when we say something is deficient, that means the very first time a licensing analyst touches that application for review, what is missing? So one of the biggest things I try and tell applicants is to perform their live scan, get their fingerprints done prior to applying, because it can take a few weeks for those fingerprints to come into the Department of Justice electronic system. So if those fingerprints were done ahead of time, by the time we match that application, we'll be ready to grab those fingerprints from the Department of Justice's database. Official transcripts sent to the Bureau from the educational institution. Of course, like we talked about before, we're going to be working on that for mortuary science schools, but there is another, funeral director also has to provide transcripts as well. So that's also, and that could be from any school, anywhere. So it's not all, I don't want this to reflect negatively on the schools themselves, because they tend to send them in bulk to us. Corporate resolutions, when an applicant is applying for a corporation, we do, and they are not listed in the articles, they're not somebody that's a corporate officer, we do need a resolution to state that they are allowed to apply for this establishment. So corporate resolutions are important. Zoning permits, we do know that those take time. So I have a feeling that's going to be a common deficiency for a while, but starting that process as soon as possible when you are opening, an establishment that's obviously related to either cemetery, funeral, crematory, one of our businesses. And what we're seeing, I think what we've been increased in seeing is that corporate offices are not matching the Secretary of State filings. So that is very important. When you list your corporate officers, if there is a change, it also needs to change at the Secretary of State so that we are verifying that the corporate offices are what you say they are with Secretary of State. It's very important that those match. That's the end of the report. Do we have any comments from our committee members? Okay. Yes, Jolena.
Thank you very much. This is always the best part of every advisory committee meeting, seeing all of the stats.
Thank you.
The one question that I had asked previously, and I was wondering if we might have any further information, has the number of renewals decreased since the increase in renewal fees?
We did see our licensing population decrease by about 1,000. So I can't tell you if that was strictly from the increase in the costs, but we did get several calls that said, what's the new fee? Oh, I'm not even working in the industry. I'm not going to renew. So we did get a handful of those, but the Bureau can't opine as to why somebody would no longer renew their license. But yes, we have seen a decrease just since I've been the Bureau chief. I hope it's not me, but We have seen an increase. We have been stagnant. I mean, I also want to say that we've been stagnant in the number of licensees. We've really always stayed the same at about 13,000, 13,500. It's been pretty consistent ever since, I mean, even with my predecessor was reporting on that same number. So now we're down to, you know, over 11,000. So we have seen a difference. Our annual report is now posted on the DCA website. The DCA annual report is what it's called, and it has all the boards and bureaus in it. And that annual report does reflect a smaller number of licensees. So.
And then when it comes to the deficiency on live scan service, I'm just looking for a little bit of clarification because some of the more recent applicants for the funeral director's license examination had indicated that they were told if their live scan service had been more than 12 months ago, they had to have their live scan service redone. And that doesn't necessarily match the instructions on the website or on the application. And then the second component of that, I understand that on the application, it asks, have you had this done before? And if yes, for what reason? But it doesn't give the indication that you need to attach the live scan service again for the application. So I'm just wondering if we have a little bit of clarification that needs to be done on the website, on the form, and in alignment with the practices, and if that might resolve that common licensing deficiency.
Very good point. I think that there has been some confusion there. I completely agree, and we're working that out with the online application, which of course will remove that paper one. So we have been addressing it. The thing with the way the statute reads is that you have to be fingerprinted for every license. So if you got a license as a cemetery salesperson, then you want to be a funeral director, you would have to print again. And the reason for that is even though we get subsequent arrest records because you are currently licensed as a salesperson, we do a two-layer check of DOJ and FBI. FBI is a single run. There's no subsequence on that. So for each license that you get, you do have to get your prints again, because if you just say you let that cemetery salesperson license go, we would send like a no longer interested, we don't need subsequence on this person, but you still are licensed over here. So we do still need license subsequence on you. So it is important that each new license you receive that you do get fingerprinted, and we are addressing that. Julia, thank you so much for bringing that up. Once we take off the paper application from online, the instructions through CFB Connect are more clear. They're already more clear and do require that 10-digit ATI number. What's great about the online is you don't necessarily have to upload your live scan. You just have to give us that 10-digit ATI number and key that in, because that's what we need to pull from the database. Also, make sure your name reads the same. Whatever name you're applying with, is it your full middle name? Is it an initial middle name? Did you add a hyphen to your last name? Is there no hyphen to your last name? Those little minor details will stop the process from getting those fingerprints automatically inputted, and we have to do some research, verify other points of information to make sure we have the right person. So both of those are being addressed. And as we are implementing these applications, we're making sure that the wording of each question is clear. You know, we are all about clarity and accessibility, making sure anyone that logs on can understand what we're talking about. So as applications are in regulation, we may also start seeing regulatory packages that just show a more updated and clear questions, because that's what's being reflected on CFB Connect.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I have this correct then. As you're looking at the cover sheet for the embalmer's application, and it indicates there are 2 exceptions for the request for live scan service. That is not accurate. There is no exception. So even if they have an active funeral director's license, they still need to be printed again.
Yes, and now I'm putting that on my list to update the cover sheet for the embalmer application. Yes, every license you'll have to get fingerprinted. Thank you so much for pointing that out. We will be updating that right away. Okay, can you write that for me? I don't forget. Thank you for that. Okay, let's open it up for public comment.
Thank you so much. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on this agenda item, please either raise your hand or type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment.
Okay.
So we're going to go back to item 9B.
Okay. Got all the
All right. I'm seeing no requests for comment at this time, so I return the floor back to you.
Thank you. I got a little hasty. I'd like to go back to agenda item 9B for our examination development section. We are concluding our exam development for the crematory manager. The last workshop will be June 13th and 14th. We expect the new exam to be released shortly thereafter. Just want to say a big thank you, enormous gratitude for those that participate, for those licensees that participate in the exam development process. I know it takes time. It takes time out of your day, out of your work, away from family, and I just really appreciate the time that they dedicate to the Bureau. Our next examination will be the funeral director. As we've stated, it's every 5 to 7 years, so we're actually not starting the funeral director until around July 2025 is when we'll start. So right before then, you'll start seeing the emails and such and recruitment for those that would like to participate in the occupational analysis. That was the end of that. Do I need to open it up for public comment again for that? I'd like to open that up again for public comment as I have to go back, please.
All right, no worries. So I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on the additional item, please type comment or raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, this is a moderator. I see no further requests for comment. I return the floor back to you.
Okay, moving on to our last agenda item, enforcement statistical report. Again, this is a statistical report from July 1 through December 31st, 2023, the first half of the fiscal year. We have updated this report. We've kind of removed a lot of the graphs and charts, mostly because I think I spoke to this last meeting. Comparing cemetery to the funeral side really kind of gives kind of a weighted look, considering the cemetery side has such fewer licensees than the funeral side. So when you're comparing percentage-wise, it's about the same, but when you're looking at it straight numbers, it looks like the funeral side has, you know, way more of whatever it is we're looking at. So we have just kind of condensed it into a single chart. Let's move on to the first slide, please. And just did an overall summary. So these are the same statistics we provided previously. We just have moved them into a single chart for a better comparison. We have the previous fiscal year and this fiscal year. We start with completed inspections. Our inspectors were about halfway, which is a great. Mandatory inspections, 555, and non-mandated inspections of funeral establishments are included in that as well. We do expect to hit all mandates by the end of the fiscal year for inspections of funeral establishments, cemeteries, crematories, a portion of brokers, a portion of cremated remains disposers. So we are online there. Our complaints received, we are a little bit more than half. Last year we received 999. It's a great number. I'll always remember that. This year we're already up to 560 consumer complaints. I will say we do see a large increase of complaints when things hit the news. So we did have a lot of newsworthy situations go on this year. So we did see a bit of a jump during this half of the fiscal year because of that as well. So I think that's why we're a little high. Citations issued, 64. That is a little low compared to last year. But again, I think I mentioned before, we will see that increase due to the citations from the audit unit. That is a May May 1st deadline for most of the annual reports, which then won't hit till the citations won't hit till the second half of the year. So we do expect to be kind of about on the same track as the previous year. We've also had a vacancy in that position, which has already been filled. So that also affects how many citations are issued. Moving on to the accusations filed with the Attorney General's office. Accusations is a formal discipline. Citations are more like an administrative discipline. Accusations are a formal discipline where we pursue revocation, sometimes settle with a stipulated settlement or probation. We have filed with the Attorney General's office 3 accusations, 6 last year. So we're kind of right on track with last year's number. The last one is formal discipline, which is the completed AG cases. So that means we've either settled with a stipulated settlement, we've settled with probation, or we have pursued revocation and gotten those final orders. So we have completed 5 already this half of the year. So we're moving these cases through the Attorney General's office. Bless you. In our annual report, there's a lot more of these statistics, which I said has now been last fiscal year 22-23 is now available online on DCA's website, dca.ca.gov. You can just put annual report in the search bar, and when you get to the table of contents, they're all linked. You can just hit cemetery funeral, it'll take you right there. So, and that gives you an overall, a much more detailed of our statistics that we have here. So we're going to just move right into the common violations then. We did still keep these separate as cemetery violations versus funeral violations. As you can see, the first one is failure to pay the regulatory charge for each cremation. That's paid quarterly. So that's the quarterly fee that we saw in the audit unit update. Maintenance standards has been a big one recently, and then failure to manage or supervise display the license, which is why we brought that up today in the agenda, and the availability of a consumer guide. So we want to make sure that that consumers are provided that as soon as they walk in and start discussing. So moving on to funeral side of the violations, failure to have a designated manager, failure to display all caskets or have a general price list, an unlicensed use of a funeral director license or title or name. That means somebody's having, handing out business cards that says I'm a funeral director when they're not an actual licensed funeral director. We have to be very cautious there because we do have funeral arrangers. So we want to make sure that the consumer knows if you're an actual licensed funeral director or if you are an agent of the funeral establishment as a funeral arranger. We want to make sure that's clear to the consumer. Or failure to comply with the required list of services or pricings on the website. So the website, there's very clear instructions of if you carry a website, how your price list must be notated on the homepage, how many clicks to get to the price list, whether you're using your GPL with the prices, whether it says available, upon request. So that is our enforcement statistical report. Is there any comments from our committee members?
Sidebar, but on the consumer guide for funeral and cemetery purchases, how often is that reviewed or updated? Just for my own information.
So we just updated it recently. I think it had been a few years, right, before our recent update, 2016, 11, 14, 15. So it was done in 14, 15, 16. And then it was just recently done. Hydrolysis became a law. And so it was just recently done to add hydrolysis. And we also kind of gave it an overhaul just for accessibility and clarity. So as the laws continue to change, like we have reduction coming in, we'll then have to review it again. And so when we do a consumer guide review and an update, we really like to give the industry plenty of notice because they tend to have like a back stock of them. And then we really like to get as much input as we can to say, hey, what are consumers saying that's not very understandable here, or how can we simplify this and make it accessible? So in the revise, we also just completed the Spanish version, and then we are looking for a couple more languages, maybe the top 5 in California to add a little bit more accessibility there too. But as it gets updated as the laws continue to change, mostly, unless we hear of something that, you know, is really not working for consumers, we can update it at any time.
Thank you.
Good question, thank you. Okay, anybody else? Oh, Jolena, I see your hand.
You mentioned natural organic reduction, so I thought now would be a good time to chime in. Where are we in the initial draft of those regulations?
So this natural organic reduction goes into effect in January of 2027. So we have already started working on just very basics of what this will look like. We are envisioning that it will be similar, just like we did with hydrolysis, kind of similar to crematory, natural organic reduction, kind of similar to both of those as where the oversight. Of course, Department of Public Health is the one that oversees the machine, and you know how that business is set up to perform it. But we do have many steps that we have to take personally in regards to inspection protocols, what to expect there, and of course, building out the regulations. But I do envision it's going to be very similar to just like a cremation and hydrolysis facility, having the training, having, you know, the crematory manager will still be the one allowed to oversee and hold responsible for that facility. We did, Senator Patterson and I, as I said before, we did already visit Washington and speak with those operators and that regulatory, and they have been very helpful in providing resources and drafts of their regulatory language using that. We are not the first, obviously, because Washington, but there's several other states that have just started making this law legal now, and their implementation dates aren't as long. So we will be able to use other states' regulatory writing as well to just make sure that we're really covering all of our bases with natural organic reduction. Looking forward to it. So that's getting built out soon. I do expect more of a focus beginning in 2025, really starting to hammer out those. But we will want a lot of feedback. We'll be bringing it to the committee, exposing it to the associations for as much feedback as we can, of course, prior to the official 45-day comment period. But we do expect it to be through and ready to accept applications as of the implementation date.
Are you anticipating, like the cremated remains disposer registration, to have an NOR disposer registration, or just following that same registration structure that you already have in place? Or are we looking at different categories of licensure or registration?
The remains that are left over, the soil that becomes what is given to the consumer or integrated into the soil, that is still considered human remains. So we do believe at this point that it'll go under the cremated remains disposer license, just as the hydrolysis did. Okay, any other committee comments? If not, we'll move on to public comment, please.
Thank you so much. I have opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment, please either raise your hand or type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, this is a moderator. I see no request for comment at this time. I return the floor back to you.
Okay, with no further comments, I just want to thank everybody again. I very much enjoyed the discussion and comments from committee and the public, and I can adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much. Everyone have a great day. And mute.